I cannot come up with a single reason why men should get married in today's environment.
Yeah.
It does not guarantee fidelity. It does not guarantee an advantage in a divorce. It does not guarantee equality when it comes to child custody. It does not guarantee anything other than you are probably going to get financially destroyed. You're going to lose half of your assets. You're going to have a fight over your kids. There's just no upside for a man in marriage.
This episode is for entertainment and information only. The opinions expressed are not professional advice, and listening does not create a client relationship. Always consult your own qualified professional before making any financial, legal, or health decisions. Hello, and welcome to the Healthy Wealth Experience. I'm your host, Chris Hall. Join us today is a man who has dedicated over 25 years to leveling the playing field in family court. Attorney, author, and father's right advocate, David Pisarra. As the founder of Men's Family Law and the visionary behind Dad's Law School, David has empowered thousands of fathers to navigate the complex and often biased world of divorce and custody battles. He's the author of several definitive guides, including Dad's Child Custody Action Plan and Dad's Child Support Action Plan. And today we're discussing the legal fitness required to protect your family, your finances, and your future. David, welcome to the Healthy Wealth Experience.
Hey, Chris, great to be here. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about yourself, like how you got into this part of the law. Obviously, you've been doing it for a really long time. Did you come out of college and, law school? Did you come out actually going like, I want to do this? Or is it something that kind of transitioned over time?
It's all my law partner's fault. When we started our law firm, I said to him, what do you want to practice? And he said, family law. And I was like, ew, gross. But I wanted to do business law. I wanted to go help entrepreneurs and get people building companies and building businesses and be the, to date myself, kind of the Gordon Gekko kind of character of law. And so I would go to the Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary Club, and the Elks Club and the Moose Club, and I would do all of my little like dog and pony show. And I would talk about what I would do with like helping people start their LLCs and form their companies and do business. But no one wanted to talk to me. It was absolute crickets. And I would wrap up and I'd say, but my firm also does family law. And I would get bum rushed. It would be, can he lower my alimony? Can he get me out of my child support? Can he get me out of this marriage? I got a divorce coming up. And it was just this like onslaught of clients. Well, I'm feeding all these clients to my partner, which is great. His calendar gets full, but then his calendar spills into my calendar because he got so much work that now I have to start doing that stuff. And so 20 years later, all of a sudden I wake up, I find myself, I'm a divorce lawyer and have been for all of this time. So it's not really my fault.
It sounds like you just found your calling found you instead of you finding your calling.
Very much so. Very much so.
So now, why specifically men's family law and dad's law? You know what I mean? Like that's obviously, we live in a world where, you have women empowerment and women's groups and things like that. But that's one of the things that really drew my attention to you. It was like you were willing to say like, this is for men. Nowadays, that's not really accepted, right? We can do it for women, no problem. But if we have a men's group, then all of a sudden it's like, well, what are you doing that for? So tell me a little bit about why you chose to do that and how that's been a good experience for you or maybe even a bad experience for you.
Sure. So it started off with me just taking all of these cases which came into our office. And so it was kind of unfiltered. And about 4 years in, I'm up to here with stress. I've got a full caseload. I'm running to court 4 times a week. I am just like, I can't do this anymore. And I made a list of the clients I liked and the clients I hated. And it was really obvious. It was like boys on the left and girls on the right. Like, oh, that's pretty interesting. What's going on there? Well, a woman comes into my office and I want his heart, his soul, turn his bones into flour. I want all of his blood. I want all the money. I want the kids. I want the house. I want to destroy him and I want him to continue paying me for the rest of my life. He walks in. I want out. It's over. What's it going to cost me? How long is it going to take? Here's your retainer agreement. Call me when you need me. 2 totally different experiences. One is very high stress. One is a lot less stress.
Well, and I mean, like into those, obviously, those are generalizations. I'm sure that probably you have a lot of like really good data to support what you're saying for sure. But what I would say is like, when it comes to the whole, like I want everything, right? Well, that's really hard as a lawyer. Like you're like, hey, listen, you're asking me to get everything. And so I'm technically a failure if I don't get you everything. If I get you 98% of what you want, I'm a failure. Whereas in the other designation, it's like, what's it going to cost me? They know that there's just an out and they want out. So that becomes very transactional. And I would say that's way less stress.
Absolutely. Plus, when a woman comes into our office, they don't want it just to be their lawyer. They want to be stylist, best friend, confessor, colleague. They want us to be right there in the trenches with them through all of the emotional ups and downs. It's 43 phone calls a day. And, oh, I don't have any money, so you got to go get it from him. Well, wait a second. You're going to run up the bill. You expect me to get everything. You want me to destroy him, and then he has to pay for all of this? Like, how is that going to work? It makes no sense.
Right. Yeah. At what point? So like about 4 years in, you decided I'm just going to take men from here on out.
4 years in, we decided that I was going to focus in on men. And that's when men's family law was kind of started. And it was focusing on mostly husbands and fathers because they were the ones who are going into court. They don't know what they're doing. They're not really well protected. They're not really well represented. And they're behind the eight ball because generally what happens is a woman will, in general, plan her divorce for between 2 to 4 years. And they will have met with 2 to 5 lawyers and figured out everything they're supposed to do because they're very good at planning. They're going to make sure that all of their credit card bills are paid off. All of his credit card bills are maxed out. They're going to make sure that they've been skimming $100 a week at the grocery store. They got a little security fund. They may have opened up a separate account with her mother or her sister or her best friend and just putting money away that we may or may not ever find in the middle of a divorce. So they're positioning themselves for success. Then they hit the man with the paperwork. He gets completely blindsided. Now he's behind the eight ball and trying to catch up. Well, good luck. It's a lot of work. It's very difficult. And what they frequently have happen is there's an emotional element here that gets played that men are never, ever, ever prepared for. And that is the betrayal. And that is the stealing of the kids. I'm going to take your kids from you. I'm going to turn your kids against you. I'm going to tell you you're never going to see them again. And you have to pay for all of our support.
Now, do you find that like when you're doing this, like, do you find that like, what is the percentage of cases that you take on where the dad comes to you and the woman is reasonable? She's like, no, we're going to do 50-50 kids. And, like, yeah, I would like a little bit of money to get myself back on my feet or whatever, but I don't want to be paid forever. Like, what is the percentage of that or in your cases?
1, 2, 7 years. 2 immediately come to mind.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, that's a lot of data. That's what I would say. Like, I'm sure some people right now, especially, if they're on the other side of this right now, they're thinking like, that's not how it went in my divorce and things like that. But I mean, you that's why I have you on the show because like you have, put your business on this side of it and you have the data to support what you're talking about. So now, where do you practice law in? Do you have multiple states you practice in or just the state you live in or?
So I actually practice law in California. So I've appeared in courts as far north as Redding and as far south as San Diego.
Nice. Very
Redding
good.
was quite the experience. I hope to never be there again.
That's where I live?
No.
That's where I live. Yeah, I live in Redding. Yeah. So
so this was so long ago. I was still representing enough women. There was a woman I was representing in Redding. And we go into court and we're there for an emergency order. The dad is trying to get custody of the kid. And he is saying that mom is this horrible alcoholic who should not have custody of her children. And of course, I'm going in and going, Your Honor, that's BS. She's a wonderful mother. He's just trying to like take the kid from her so he doesn't have to pay child support. The morning we're going to court, there is a private investigator who is photographing her in the bar of the hotel sucking back beer. That was not a good day in court.
No, that's terrible.
It's like of all days.
Yeah. I actually think I know where that bar is, just so you know, but I'm not gonna say it online.
It's not their fault.
So with the you've moved on to author. You've written several books and some guides, and you've got your podcast that you're working on. You've got other things like that. What made you transition from like, hey, I'm going to do this like one-off, right? I'm doing it one-off, one at a time, to I want to reach more people and help more people. And like, again, that's a really big jump from, getting paid hourly to like, putting all that time, energy into something that, may not even return anywhere near the same results as your hourly.
So here's the hard reality. The world of family law has dramatically changed since I first started practicing. 27 years ago, 2 lawyers would call each other up. We're like, okay, so we got John and Mary. They're going to get a divorce. Like, we got to divvy up the house. We got to divvy up the property. Figure out custody of the kids. Or you send over the bank statements. I'll send over the 401k statement. We'll exchange our paperwork. I'll send over a proposal, and we'll basically get this thing done. In the year that Nicole Brown Simpson was murdered, that was a change in domestic violence that has had an echo effect across family law. And so over all of the years since then, it has become much more a nuclear option to claim that the other side has committed domestic violence. And when a woman goes into court and says, he's an abuser, she basically wins everything. She wins the kids, she wins the divorce, and if she's properly set herself up, she's going to win a whole lot of money with the spousal support and the child support. And so what I've seen is men are getting more and more and more pushed back, taken out of their children's lives on flimsier and flimsier evidence of abuse. O.J. Simpson is one bad extreme. No one is ever going to justify that.
Yeah.
The opposite extreme where we're at today is coercive control. You speak English. Do you have any idea what that means? Neither does anybody else. It means whatever the victim wants it to mean. It means whatever the judge thinks it means at the time. And they use that now to take dads away from their kids so that they have to pay the maximum amount of child support. They pay the maximum amount of spousal support, put mom in the maximum amount of control. And so what's happened is I've seen men just go from being essentially equivalent parents to now very easily turned into nothing more than an ATM for their children. And the men don't understand it at all because we don't talk about it in society. And if I say domestic abuse, almost every man across the board is going to think that's physically hitting a woman. I've never hit a woman, therefore I'm not a domestic abuser. And that's patently false because in today's world, if you are in an argument with somebody and you raise your voice, that is abuse.
Wow.
If you work 60 hours a week and you pay all the bills, and you just make sure that the credit card or the debit card that the mother of your children is using just always works. She can go to whatever grocery store she wants. She can go to a clothing store, bookstore, whatever. Swipe the card, it always goes through. That's financial abuse.
Because you were in control of it.
Because you didn't tell her every day what was happening. Now, the fact that she doesn't care, the fact that she never looked, the fact that she had access but didn't bother, totally irrelevant.
Okay. Yeah.
So you yell at your spouse, you get in an argument, you yell at your spouse, that's abuse. You get in an argument with your spouse and you shut down, you stop talking to them, that's abuse. That's called the silent treatment. That's considered abusive.
Wow.
You're in
Now,
a
does it
fit
work
of
the other?
just like agony and you're like, I can't handle my job, my work, you, the kids, all this, I should just kill myself. That's domestic abuse because you're threatening suicide. Anything in today's world can be twisted into abuse.
It reminds me of when I was a pharmaceutical rep. I used to be a pharmaceutical rep for 10 years. And right near the end, the writing was on the wall. Pharmaceutical reps were getting downsized, right-sized, whatever you want to call it. But then all of a sudden, people started going out on stress disability. Right? They got a stress disability. They didn't break their leg or anything like that. They just were stressed. And the cool part about a stress disability was they could go out, the company would have to pay him on disability, and then they could go golfing. And they didn't say they had a hurt back. They said they were stressed. So no, when I golf, it relieves my stress. When I go on vacation, it relieves my stress. This sounds like the equivalent of that. Basically it's a stress disability because I say so and no one can refute it. Now, how does that work? Does it work the exact same way with women, though? In other words, if the man claims that she was threatening suicide, if the man claims that, she was always yelling at me, she demeaned me in front of my friends, can he go back? Or is it more of a situation of the first person to claim it is the one who gets to really hold on to it? The other person can't, is just now they're just, oh, that's just sour grapes or whatever. How does that work like that? Or
no? That would be far too logical. If a man goes into court and claims that she's yelling at me and she's harassing me, what did you do to make her yell at you? Now, that same judge would turn right around and tell me that you can't make somebody mad enough to hit you. Okay, right. You've never met my mother, clearly. The reality is that when men go into family court and they're trying to show abuse, we need to have photographs. We need to have video. Preferably, I need to have you bleeding. It needs a much higher standard of
flipping that back to the other side. It just can be a statement. He yells at me. And that's it. That's all we have to do. Wow. Okay.
I got one yesterday. The children are terrified of their father. Now, this is a 13 and 15-year-old kid. Daughter's 13, boy's 15. They're terrified of their father, except that they're over there 3 days a week. Like, what do you mean they're terrified of them? Like, how? They just make stuff up.
So getting into protect. So one of the reasons I have you on the show is it's the healthy wealth. And, the idea is that you can't be wealthy unless you're also healthy. But the two things that devastate a financial plan faster than anything is a death of one of the primary people or a divorce. And so for me, I was married for 26 years and then got a divorce. And it was financially, very devastating. And I mean, like, here I am 5 years later, everything's pretty good. I'm doing pretty well. But I mean, if you look at the trajectory of my success and wealth and you take that, you can pinpoint it and it's like a flat to downward line, for like, 3 or 4 years and then it starts going again. But I mean, if you take that with what I know in compound interest and how compound interest works, and you take that little block of time out, and you would have said, hey, just let that run. I mean, it's realistically cost me millions of dollars. I mean, by the time you compound interest it, not right now. I didn't pay out millions of dollars now, but I'm just saying like that Jeff definitely changed the trajectory of my wealth. And I feel that's one of the things I kind of feel like, with you focusing on men is like, they're trying to build wealth for themselves for sure, but they were also trying to build wealth for their spouse. They were also, in my case, I know for a fact that I was really working hard to build wealth for my kids. Mm-hmm. I wanted something. So in our divorce, when we did divorce, we used a lawyer just to run paperwork. I actually gave with both hands. Now, 5 years later, I'm thinking maybe I should have done that, but I did give with both hands, and I was very satisfied with where we were at with things. But it did strike me as financially devastating. Again, not down, but not out. How about that? So I do see what you're saying, because like, in a situation where like you're giving, Trump's new, it's not new, but the one that came out, is it 2020? When was is the Secure Act the one that he basically said like you cannot deduct child support? I mean, not child support, but alimony and stuff. Do you know what I'm talking about?
So Congress rewrote the laws on alimony,
mm-hmm.
and they've made it more equitable, maybe.
Right.
So it's no longer income to the receiving party, and it's no longer deductible from the paying party. They're not having to pay taxes on that.
Which is bananas, by the way. And I mean, it's so clear why they did that, because the data supports that the person paying is in a higher tax bracket than the person receiving. So by doing it, you're actually using it to like go, okay, listen, I make this money, but I don't have to pay taxes on this part. So that's good. She has to pay tax on it, which she's in a lower bracket or he's in a lower bracket. I don't want to be, one-sided, but they're in lower brackets that they can pay the taxes on it. And I can get the deduction. Well, now I pay taxes on it and then hand it over. And so like if you go back and look at what I pay out every month and you add the taxes back in, it's significant. I mean, it's a bananas amount of money.
Yes.
And so I think people don't understand that too when they work on these settlements. And do the judges take that into account at all? The new laws that say that it's not a deduction for the person giving it, or it's the same numbers as it was before that?
So in theory, yes, they're supposed to take the tax implications into account. It's one of the, like in California, we've got, I think it's 17 factors under Family Code 4320 that a judge is supposed to look at. And it's like, is the person healthy? Do they have an education? Do they contribute to the other person's education? Do they contribute to the other person's career? Like, are there underage children? Like, all of these things. And one of them is the tax implications that they're supposed to look at. Judges are nothing but elevated lawyers. We don't receive tax training in law school. We don't receive psychological training in law school. We don't receive interpersonal dynamic training in law school. All a judge is somebody who has been able to get a governor to appoint them or enough people to vote for them. They have no special training. Now, they go to special training, but usually that's more for judicial demeanor, and it's the hard black letter rule of law, not the flexible, fluid parts of how do you balance out the tax implications of a person at a 34% tax bracket versus 1 at 20, and then how are you going to create an actual equality? And no, that's not what they do. And it's sad, because what ends up happening is many men end up financially devastated. Now, it doesn't sound like you ended up living in your car at any point. I have
no, and then we're going to get into some of the details of like things that you're going to recommend. I definitely want to get into that as well. But one of the things that I put in our divorce that I was like, hey, listen, I'm willing to give with both hands, but I want a non-modifiable contract. I don't want to come back 10 years from now and be like, hey, Chris, you're doing really good. And my lifestyle hasn't changed at all. So How about a little bit more money? So if there's one key thing that I could tell people is like, absolutely, agree on what you agree on, but then lock it in. And that actually hurt me in the beginning, by the way, because we got divorced in 2021 and I gave her all the numbers based on my current production. Well, I'm a financial advisor and I get paid for assets under management. Well, guess what happened in 2022? The market went down 20%, which means my income went down 20%, but the amount of money that I gave her did not change at all. So that was a tough year for me. And so, so you have to kind of be careful with the non-modifiable part both ways, but just consider that if you're in a job where you could get less income, you've locked yourself into that. So you better be comfortable about getting it. If not, you better be good at delivering pizzas.
So here's a little cold comfort for you. Even if you hadn't locked it in, even if you had a modifiable agreement, if you had tried to go into court and modify your support down, judge most likely would not have granted it because they would say it's a temporary situation and they don't want to change it as a consequence of that. So
But
yes, it was hard for you, but honestly, you probably did the better deal in the long run having it locked in because you wouldn't have gotten the reduction anyways.
Right. And then the other would have been true for sure though, right? If I was making more money,
100%.
you would have been like, oh, she needs more money. Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I really want to dig into the details here, but there's one thing that's really just I just got to talk to you about it is, you have thousands of subscribers on your social channels. Was that pretty organic? did that kind of happen all at once? Did you go onto a podcast and then all of a sudden, boom, a bunch of followers? Or was it just I started with 20 and then I had 100 and then, because you're at thousands now. So how did that come about? I'm always interested to find how people hit that track.
Sure. Across all channels, we're at about 250,000 right now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so the way that that's happened is it started off about 3-4 years ago with me just doing a little TikTok thing. I was just like, hey, I'm going to talk about domestic violence because it's January and divorces are coming. And then that has grown over the years. 2 years ago, I decided I really wanted to jump in and build this thing, hired a producer literally to just push the button on the camera and go from 1 TikTok a day to 3 TikToks a day. And then we were doing okay on that and we were seeing growth. And then I was so good at producing content that he couldn't keep up with the editing. So we hired an editing team out of Pakistan. And so now we have an editing team. And right now we do about 20 TikToks a day that uploaded and posted to Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and TikTok. So as we do more video, we see growth. It's very, very linear in that regard.
Yeah.
I've had a couple TikToks go so viral. One of my most viral ones is, why do men still get married today? And my answer is, I don't bleeping know. I've got no I cannot justify a marriage.
That was one of my questions here. So, yeah.
I got nothing.
Yeah.
There's no upside from my perspective. There's no upside for a man to get married.
Yeah.
But that video's gone viral. I did one video where I had a couple DVDs because one of my clients had sent me a couple DVDs. One for me for a documentary I'm working on the silver bullet and how men get destroyed with domestic violence. He was ready to kill himself. And one of those DVDs was for his kids so they could hear his side of the story when they turned 18. That video went viral and that drove a lot of growth and got a lot of followers.
Did that man commit suicide? Is that what you're saying?
No.
He did not. He did or he didn't? I'm so sorry.
He didn't.
Okay, good.
He ended up getting the girls back. Mom's got a long history of bipolar, meth addiction, works in the adult film industry. It's just, she's a mess. But she's a very convincing actress, so she was able to convince the judge that she was an angel and that my police officer, bomb-sniffing dog guy, was the evil, horrible one in all of this. And finally, after 4 go-rounds of these battles, the judge finally got it. And it's oh, Mom, you're the problem, not Dad. Now I see. Okay, I'm going to make a note in the file. And then that ended it. And he got the girls forever, which is good. But it's not uncommon for men to get so depressed that they're at that point. Yeah. I get at least once a week, I have a DM or a text message or an email from a man who is on the verge.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, a couple of years before I did get divorced, one of the things I was just talking to one of my really good friends about it, what do you think? Is this something I should pursue? And one of the things that he had said was, I could tell you, because he had been divorced several times actually. And he's like, I could tell you there's going to be a time when you're sitting there on a Saturday and you want to play with your kids, you want to go, to a ball game or whatever, do something with them, and they're not going to be there. He goes, that's one of the loneliest spots that a man can get. And I was really blessed that my divorce happened really late in life. Both my kids were fairly mobile, so it wasn't they were with mom and I couldn't talk to him or see him or anything like that. They both had phones and I mean, my son got a car like the next year. My daughter already had one. So like we have a pretty good situation going there. But I do feel for people who are like, their kids are 6 and 7. They're 4 and 3, and like their mom won't let them talk to them at all. And like, I just can only imagine how that would really weigh on a person's mental health. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think, we don't talk enough about men's mental health, period. But that has got to be one of the largest stressors of men's mental health that can exist. And I only got a little taste of it, and I didn't love it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So,
And what we're seeing a lot these days are from birth, mom is trying to cut dad out.
mm-hmm.
So he's missing all of those really early stages of life where children are supposed to be bonding.
Mm-hmm.
And in my perspective, I look at that and I say, that's mom being abusive to the child. She's denying that child the opportunity to bond with the father figure that's going to impact that child's life forever.
Yeah. And I mean, you're always gonna hear like, well, he's abusive, or he's a drunk, or something to that effect. And it's like, not every dad can be abusive and drunk. Not every person can be like, every woman's ex is a narcissist. It's like we're not all narcissists. We can't all be narcissists. But it's like, does feel like there's a broad brush painted on these situations. So I try to like make sure that I reverse it and say, like, of course there's women out there who want the husband to still be involved and things like that. But, you're definitely getting the side of it where, they're planning their exit from the beginning, making sure that they're the only caregiver, and that the kids, I often said, like, so with my kids, when they're little and stuff, if you don't pay attention to them when they're little, they're not going to pay attention to you when they're older. And I've seen that work out with my kids. I don't want to name names because, like, this is obviously something people can listen to, but we've had people in my kid's life where they were like, hey, is so-and-so going to be there today at the party? Nope, they're not going to be there. And then so-and-so is going to be there at the party, right? And then as they've grown up, the person who didn't go to the party, like, they don't care about them. They don't talk to them. They don't call them. And the person who was at the party, they're like, that's one of their favorite people in the entire world. Can't wait to see him. We'll go out of their day to like make like a phone call or a text. So I think that, for men, if you feel like you're in a situation where you're not getting that, you're not getting that time with your kids, I feel like you really need to like put yourself in there and be like, no, I got the kids. It's Saturday. I got the kids. I'm going to take the kids. We're going to go get donuts. You relax, do whatever you want to do this morning. We're going to take out, but like being proactive with it, I think is like the advice I would give on that.
100%. And that's why I wrote my book, Dad's Child Custody Action Plan, is because dads need to know what to do. They need to get in there, whether they're actually still living with mom as a family unit or whether they're separate. In either case, that dad does need to be more proactive, because if they don't have the track record, it makes it that much harder when they have to go into court to prove to the judge that they're a good dad, which is what you have to do. It's not fair, it's not equitable, but it's just reality. If
So
you're a man going into family court, you have to prove yourself. I'm sorry. Tell me that's not fair. And I'm like, okay, great. Let's move on.
Right. So let's go into that. Let's go into a little bit of like the child custody action plan that you have. And again, I know you have the book available. We'll make sure to link to it on the description notes. But like, what are some easy things that people can do to make sure that they're positioning themselves to make sure that they get some custody of their kids?
The biggest thing dads need to do is start keeping track of what they're actually doing. And I tell dads, like, go get one of those big desk calendars from like Office Depot or Staples and just use that and just mark the day that you see the kids and what you do. And then if you go to the movies, take the receipt, staple it to that month. If you go to SeaWorld, staple it to that month. If you're going to Chuck E. Cheese, staple it to that month. Why? Because if at some point in the future you have to be able to go back and recreate the history of what you've done with your kids, you've got everything in one place. You've got the date, you got the receipt, you got the proof. Now you can just create a declaration, a letter to the judge that says, in January, here's what I did with my kids. We did this, this, and this. We saw this movie, went to that restaurant, we did this, to that park, we saw this soccer game. So you have what you need to be able to prove to the judge that you're an active and engaged dad. Because mark my words, if you walk into court and you say, I'm a good dad, I want my 50% custody, and you say nothing else, you are not walking out with 50% custody. Because mom's not going to allow it. Mom's going to come into court and go, he's negligent, he's absent, he's never around, he doesn't know the kid's best friend, he doesn't know their food allergies, he doesn't even know their shoe size, Your Honor. How can I be expected to trust this man with my kids? He doesn't know anything about them. And the judge is like, well, I've got this stack of information from mom, and I got nothing from dad. Who am I going to believe? So we're going to go with mom.
Right. Okay. That's a really good. So now that kind of a tip, though, it's really good. But like, is that something like that dad needs to do when he hears the like? Is it something? What triggers that? Like, cause obviously I didn't do that, obviously. And when we did get our divorce, my kids were much older, so I wasn't too terribly worried about it. Plus, we were pretty amicable. But I guess my point is like, when would have been a good time to say like, hey, listen, I got to start keeping track of this stuff. Is it like the minute you start hearing rumblings, or the first time you have a fight was like where you say like, well, maybe we should get divorced? Where's the tracking where that starts?
When the child is born.
Okay.
Because here's the reality. She's going to be planning. You don't know when she's going to start planning, and you don't know when she's going to pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be ready the whole time.
Yeah.
Because one of the other big things that you have to remember is people don't get married these days. There's a lot fewer divorces because there's a lot fewer marriages. People still have children. They still have kids together that have to be raised. But in that situation, mom is the presumed parent before you go to court. Dads have no rights. But I signed the birth certificate. Yeah. You know what you signed? The obligation to pay child support. That's what you signed.
So in those situations with people not getting married, and of course I see that as a viable option. I'm in a very healthy relationship, love the woman that I'm with. When we met, I said, I'm probably never going to get married again. She said, same thing. Here we are, a year and a half later, both saying probably never going to get married again. And I guess, the outside of the Judeo-Christian, like you need to be married thing, right? Just outside of that, or religious, should just say religious, because lots of religious people think you should be married. Outside of the religious tenets of it, what are the reasons why someone would get married?
Well, do you want me to answer from the perspective of a man or as a woman?
Let's go with men. I think that, we can let the women have their day another time.
There's not a single reason.
Okay.
I cannot come up with a single reason why men should get married in today's environment. It does not guarantee fidelity. It does not guarantee an advantage in a divorce. It does not guarantee equality when it comes to child custody. It does not guarantee anything other than you are probably going to get financially destroyed. You're going to lose half of your assets. You're going to have a fight over your kids. There's just no upside for a man in marriage.
So now, have you seen it, because of what we're talking about, though, have you seen an upswing in prenuptials?
No. I mean, we do just as many prenups now as we always did, which is a handful a year, because people are like, oh, I'm in love. We're going to be forever. This is the one and only. It's never going to fall apart. 70% of marriages fail, but you go with that. Go ahead, buddy.
Well,
sure.
And I feel like, you know what I mean? Like, because I did go through divorce, and I did, I met people who were getting divorced or had been divorced and stuff like that. And of course, when you're married, you meet people that are married, but they're very unhappy. So even though the number is 70% like divorce rate, the failure rate's much higher, because a failed marriage is also like a sexless marriage, or a marriage where there's no partnership anymore, and it's just two people. I know people like where the man goes and works in the garage on woodworking, and the woman stays in and does her thing, and they never talk to each other. And so that's a failed marriage too. So the number is much higher than I think 70%, in my opinion.
Guaranteed. No, you're 100% right. You're 100% right. I picked up a divorce's case. I was talking to the man, and he volunteered the last time they had relations was the conception of their 15-year-old son. So that's 15, call it 16 years of being in a sexless marriage.
That's rough. That's rough on it. That's right. I don't care who you are. That's rough. Like that man, woman, young, old, that's rough. That's too much. That's too long. So kind of going back to the whole prenuptial thing, I often like talk about it with my clients and stuff. Like if they're younger, like my kids both know this, they could probably recite it to you better than I can at this point. But I basically tell them like, I'm okay with you getting married, but don't get married without a prenup, period. And they're like, well, I don't, like, it's not like there's this stigma to a prenup. And I'm like, make no mistake, you have one. If you get married in the state of California or pretty much anywhere in the United States, you have one.
Yes.
The one that you signed off on was, we'll let the judge decide. And I'm like, when was the last time that you wanted the government to decide how to do anything in your life?
Right.
But you're doing that. Like, I don't think people understand that if you don't have a prenup, you have signed off to say a judge 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now, who barely knows my circumstances, is going to decide what happens with me and my kids. That's right. Bananas, honestly.
Absolutely.
The fact that we even have this system is crazy.
Yeah, 100%. And a prenup is really important if you're going to have people who are getting married with assets.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going into a marriage and you've got an asset, you need to have that protected. And you need to be trained on how to keep that asset separate. Because oftentimes what we see is people do the prenuptial and then they start commingling funds. But they think like, oh, well, I'm protected because I had this prenup. Well, no, you kind of blew it, buddy. You started mixing funds and that was a mistake. And you got to remember that you have to be really diligent about keeping things separate if you're going to have a prenup and have it actually sustain itself in court. Because the whole point is to be able to protect assets that you have going into that marriage or that you're going to get during marriage. Your kids presumably will be inheriting something from you, something from their mother. And so you may be one of those dads who's like, you know what? You can get married, but if you don't sign a prenup, you're out of the will.
I've heard that multiple times now, and I think it's a fantastic strategy. What
It
are
is.
some things that people can do to maintain their own individual assets? Like you talked about, what you're talking about, like happens a lot of times in a second marriage or a third marriage, where they get into this marriage and they brought assets with them, whatever's left over from the previous marriage, right? They brought it with them, and then they get into a marriage, and then immediately, without hesitation, that's kind of like been now pigeonholed to another person. Like, so what are some things to do besides obviously a prenuptial? What are some things people can do to kind of like protect their assets?
The biggest thing is just maintaining separate accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that frequently what happens is with second and third marriages is couples that maintain separate accounts. It's a healthier perspective on the one hand, because you don't have that stress of are you spending too much of our money? Because I know I've got my own, which is one of the reasons why couples break up is because there's that constant stress around money. So if you can get rid of that stress, you got a much better chance at actually surviving as a couple.
Yeah. What do you think about, so this is something I wish I had done. One of the things I was willing to do was we did what's called a nesting agreement. So I'm sure you're familiar with it, but for those who are listening, they probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But a nesting agreement was I built a house here in Reading, and my kids live in it full time. They don't move. They don't backpack. That's their home. That's their room. That's their workstations and stuff like that. That's their stuff. And then what happens is that my ex-wife and we rotate every other week. So like this is her week to be with the kids. Next week will be my week with be the kids. And then in those off weeks, then we each have like a little place to go to that's not that house. And so we're doing a nesting agreement to like sort of, make sure the kids don't have as much interruption as possible. Now, obviously you have to maintain 3 households. So that's not really like conducive for a lot of people, but we were just blessed enough to be able to do that. But with that being said, what I would have liked to have done, and I don't know if they know this is something that would have been possible, was we had talked about like they're going to get some money, they're going to get some inheritance from their mom, they're going to get some inheritance from their dad, that kind of thing. But like, I guess when I gave the property up to her so that that was her part of the splitting of assets, I would have loved to have had something in there that said like, this has got to go to your kids. Like you can't just sell this and go to the Bahamas. Which now realizing like, she's a good person. I don't think that she would do that. But I mean, she could. Legally, I have no bearing on that whatsoever. She could sell it, take all the money, go to the Bahamas, and never come home, and my kids get squat. And in my mind, I was giving them the house through her. Is that something that you can write into divorce stuff now? Is that something I could have written that in?
You may be able to contractually do it. I've never seen it done. I've never even attempted it. I don't know if under contract terms we could do that. I highly doubt you could get your ex to agree to it.
Yeah, right. True, right. Because they want to have the control, right?
Right.
So
and the answer would also be like, well, they're going to come back with, well, okay, but then you have to do the same.
True, right.
And so now you're going to be like, well, wait. No, I don't want that.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I want to go to the Bahamas. I want to sell the house and go to the Bahamas.
Right. I want to have the freedom because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, but that's you're right. That's an equality type of a things. When it comes to finances, you said, do the best you can to keep them separate, obviously. So if 2 people are together and they're married or not married, because we just realized that, a lot of people aren't getting married these days, they live in the same house, they're raising a child together, but they're separate. So they should still maintain their own separate accounts with their money coming in. And then they should take that money and kind of like co-mingle just a portion of it so that the kids are being raised correctly or the bills are being paid. How does that, what's the best way for men to like go, hey, I'm in this relationship, but I'm this part of it. I'm not all of it.
Well, if you've got a prenuptial agreement, that's definitely the best way to do it, is to we have our agreed upon amount of what we're going to spend for our community expenses, the cable bill, the utility bill, the trash bill, the mortgage, the rent, whatever, but have the majority of your stuff be kept separate. And we're seeing more of this happening Because as women are suddenly realizing, like, oh, wait, equality also means I might have to pay spousal support? Well, this isn't good. No, we got to fix that.
Yeah. No, I do. I know of a woman who she was a really high level nurse, and her husband was, I want to say like he made like $35,000 a year. It was really a low number. And like, yeah. So when they got divorced, she's paying him alimony. And I mean, I think there's probably a few men out there that would be like, yeah, but it's tough, I think, on both people when you have to start giving off portions of your money to, someone that you're no longer in a relationship with, right? There's another guy I've seen on, social media that basically talks about like, you as a man typically have this obligation that carries forward, right? So like once the divorce is settled and you've severed that relationship, you still have an obligation moving forward. But typically speaking, and again, I don't want to be too generalized, but typically speaking, the other person's side of the relationship is completely severed. They have no more obligations. They don't have to do anything. And that's where I think the inequality really is. And I don't think people really pay attention to that. There's an inequality to the fact that one person has an obligation for the next 5, 10, 30 years, and the other person's obligation is completely done. And that seems like that's being missed in the law.
It is. It is. And to a degree, it's a result of antiquated systems that have not caught up with current society. Where we were in the 50s and 60s and where we are today, radically different places.
Yeah. Yeah. So like with your dad's child support action plan, what does that kind of look like? What are some kind of key points to that men can pay more attention to? Because again, child support is a huge thing. That number is set by a judge who doesn't know completely all the finances, just what you've given them. And moving forward, like, that could be a real drain on a man. So what are some good tips on how to make sure child support isn't backbreaking, right? We all want to take care of our kids, but we don't want our back broken for the idea that, the ex-wife is now going to Starbucks every day and she's going shopping all the time. And then we turn around, our kids aren't being fed and they're not being clothed. And you know what I mean? That's the other part of that too that bothers me. So
sure, the misapplication of the support is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing in this book that I think men need to take away is that they need to make sure that the other party has their income properly contributed in the calculation. And frequently, they don't do their homework. They don't do their discovery. They don't put the person through a vocational examination. They don't make them actually get a job or at least have income imputed, as it means if they had a job,
Mm-hmm.
to them when they're figuring out child support. Because, women love to come into court and go, I can't work. No one will hire me. I'm too old. My skills are too out of date. It's going to take me forever to get a job. So I have no income. Judges buy that crap, and men don't contest it, and they should, because they need to be like, wait a second, hold on here, hang on. You're telling me you are a capable enough mother that you could coordinate 3 kids' school calendars. You could coordinate my job. You could make sure the bills get paid, put food on the table on a regular basis, but you have no skills in the marketplace. You can't learn how to do anything? Like, that doesn't make any sense. You can't simultaneously tell me what an amazing multitasker you are as the world's best mother, but, I can't get a job at McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wait, what? Hold on. Those jobs were originally designed for teenagers who have half a brain.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying you can't do that job.
Well, so is there a portion of that where, I remember like the joke was like, I want you to be able to support me in the lifestyle that I've, been accustomed to. Right. So like, that's a joke. Like I always tell my significant other now, I say all the time, I would like, hey, listen, I want you to make a bunch of money so I can be a really good stay-at-home dad for your cat. You know what I mean? I want to be able to live in the lifestyle I'm accustomed to. So it's kind of like a running joke type of a thing. But I guess my point to that is like, what you're saying is like, you can't go get a job. It's like, they don't want to get that job. That's not in their lifestyle. So does the law protect their lifestyle?
It does to a degree, but it also, if a man will push for it, it will protect his lifestyle.
Okay.
And that is that she can contribute. She has an obligation to contribute to those children's support.
That's great.
She has an obligation to get a job.
Yeah, that's great. That's really
and if
good.
she's, in today's environment, most likely she's going to have a college degree. Most likely she's going to be healthy. Most likely she's going to be capable and has a driver's license, is able to go get a job and contribute to the kids' support. And judges will impute income if you demand it.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's probably, the one thing that I would say, like, that I've learned today that I think is really important is that the men really do need to like fight back on that part of it. because I think that's where most men, like splitting of the assets, like, hey, we lived in this house, we had to sell it so I could give her half and I keep my half, and now I live in this house. I think that's like, I don't think that's very destructive. I mean, it is destructive, but not like catastrophic, I guess. It can be in certain situations, I would say. But like the constant reduction of your income over like X number of years, that to me is catastrophic. That is something that, and again, if they can't do anything, I think you'd want to take care of them probably. But if they can easily get a job and they just don't want to because it kind of interrupts their lifestyle, I think that men need to push back on that. And that's a really good point that you brought up, because I don't think I would have even considered it.
Yeah. Yeah, men do need to push back more, both on custody and on support.
So how do you see like technology, like specifically things like AI and online education? Like you have your union of the dads community. How do you see that changing the landscape of family law for the next generation of fathers?
Wow, we are seeing ChatGPT and Claude just in everything when it comes to court filings. Like people are relying on it as like draft my declarations, draft my motions. And so we're actually coming out with a course on how to use AI in family law, because dads are they're using the tool, but they don't know how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like they're using a wrench as a hammer. Yeah,
Which
it'll kind of
men
do
are
the
known to do
job,
that.
but it's not necessarily what it's meant for.
Yeah, we're known to do that.
Well, occasionally, yes.
Well, that's great. And again, like, I work with AI quite a bit. My AI of choice right now is Gemini, and I work with Gemini quite a bit. But I would tell you the one thing that I have learned from all of these AI tools that you use, it's all about the prompting.
Yes.
It is a garbage in, garbage out kind of a deal. Like if you give them a basic prompt, you're going to get maybe an answer you didn't care about. But if you give them a very detailed prompt, you're going to get exactly what you wanted. And
Absolutely.
So a course like what you're talking about is phenomenal, because like you're basically going to say like, here's the prompts. That to me is really valuable. When do you think you'll have that product out?
We're shooting for the end of February.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. So when you do get that out, let me know and I'll go update the show notes to have the link to that so that we can get that put out for you as well. I do want to be respectful of your time. I know it's valuable. We're coming up on the hour mark here pretty soon. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would love to talk about?
We touched briefly on mental health and physical health for men. And those are two things that I think men really need to be reminded of on a regular basis. And that is, I don't care if it's uncomfortable, go see a doctor. Get basic blood work done. Take care of yourself, because if you fall apart, you can't be there for your kids. I get you don't like the idea of somebody poking and prodding you and looking at you and judging you. Get over it. You've been in locker rooms your entire life. Trust me, all the other men have been doing the same thing to you for the last however many years. Like, move on. And the other one is your mental health. One of the things that happens at our VIP meetings every week in our VIP program is dads come together and they share what's going on in their life. And almost invariably, the first time a dad shows up, I usually ask them like at the end of the meetup, like, okay, so Chris, you've been around for a while, you've heard some input from other dads. What'd you think? And usually the result is this: oh my God, this was amazing. Thank you. I thought I was alone. I thought I was the only one. It's so good to feel the support and to know that I'm not the only one going through this, that I'm not the only one with the crazy ex who's telling me I'm lazy, a deadbeat, a loser, a scumbag, horrible in bed, didn't make enough money, can't support my kids, can't support her, and I need to go make more money because all she wants is more money out of me. And it relieves that stress, and it takes them from that place of getting to suicide and moves them into a position of, okay, now I can start fighting.
So what is the VIP program? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So if you go to dadslawschool.com, in the upper right-hand corner, we've got the VIP program, and it's all of my video courses. So it's child custody action plan, discovery, and evidence course, contempt course for when your ex won't follow the court orders. It's got child support case course. We have a course on how to do objections in family court when you're actually in the heat of battle. And now we're going to have our AI course coming out in February. And then as a member of the VIP program, we have weekly meetups. So from 4 to 6 on Thursdays, dads get together and they ask me questions. We talk about their cases. We talk about strategy. They've got questions about the video courses. They got questions about what's going on in their case. And they share what's going on in their life. And so they get the legal support that they need, and they more importantly get the emotional support that so many men don't have in today's world.
That's excellent. Yeah, I think I had mentioned it earlier in the podcast that, men's mental health is a discussion that doesn't really happen. It's very rare. And even among really good friends, they won't want to necessarily broach that subject because it is truly like, it can be truly painful, and we are very good at like going, that's painful, we'll just ignore that. So good. That's really good to hear. I'm happy to link to your website so people can get that access to that, because again, the two things you just said are perfect. Get your physical body looked at, right, by a professional, and then get your mental health looked at as well. Like, and even if it's just hearing other guys tell the same story you have in your head, that's so helpful for our mental health to know, again, that we're not alone, that we feel that way, but hundreds of other men do as well. So, well, David, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's like one of the things where, again, from a healthy wealth perspective, we're talking about men's mental health. We're talking about like protection of wealth and mechanisms for, and again, like, I'm, again, going for me, I was a person that just gave with both hands. I wanted to really acknowledge the contribution that my ex-wife brought to my career and my family, and I wanted to make sure that I did that. But in the same respect, as I move away from that marriage and I move into a new relationship, and I have all these people that I'm working with as a financial advisor, I do realize like there just needs to be more of a protection component from the male's perspective. Like, we're really very poor at it. And so that's one of the reasons I thought it'd be great to have you on, because again, the two greatest things that devastate wealth are someone in the family dying, one of the providers is dying, or a divorce. Those are the two major disasters that happen in a family's financial well-being. With that being said, is there anything else you want to talk about?
That's it. I just want people to go sign up at dadslawschool.com, and, if you're going through this stuff, get the books and you can start there. It's like the starter kit for how to defend yourself in family court.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time. I will make sure that all those links are in the description that we talked about, which basically sounds like it's Dad's Law School. We'll kind of get them wherever they need to go. They can get the books there as well.
Yes.
Okay. And then you have a podcast you're working on. You're about to release that again, probably by the end of this month. So once you have that link, give that to us. We'll get that in there as well. And then if you guys are listening to this show and you're like, man, this was really valuable stuff, I enjoyed it. It makes me feel better about being a dad or being a husband, and I feel more protected and happier. Then all I'm asking you to do is hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, make a comment, show the algorithm that this is valuable data for you, so that we can continue to grow the show, we can continue to get followers, and we can continue to get high quality guests like David in our lives. So thank you again, David, for your time. Thank you to everybody who listens to the show and supports it. It's been phenomenal. I think we're over 700,000 views in the last 60 days across all channels. So we're really starting to crank. It's going really well, and I'm very happy with it. So thank you for that. We really appreciate you. And then, David, once again, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Chris. Have a great day.
Yeah, you as well. All right, guys. Have a great day. We're going to sign off here, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.